sir. A very warm welcome, everyone. We are gathered here today for a seminar on understanding industrial relations and human resource management in the Indo Japanese context. May I request Mr. Madhusudan, Chargé d'Affaires, to deliver the inaugural remarks?
uh, Mr. Kenichi Ayukawa, Mr. Alok Vidyalankar, Mr. S.Y. Siddiqui, Mr. Shunsuke Inoue, Mr. Kazuo Komaki, distinguished guests, speakers, and participants. It's a great honor to welcome all of you to today's event on understanding industrial relations and human resource management in the Indo-Japanese context. I'm happy to note that this event today brings together distinguished experts and practitioners to discuss the evolving landscape of industrial relations in India and explore common ground with Japan. Friends, the special strategic and global partnership between India and Japan is vibrant, dynamic, and is going strong, crossing several heights in the process. Our economic partnership is age old, and Japanese companies that have ventured into India have always found that they say in India a great opportunity to make value for their shareholders and create a positive impact not only to the lives of people in India and Japan, but indeed the world at large. I would like to use the presence of Mr. Ayukawa here to highlight, as an example, the resounding success that Suzuki Motors has had in the Indian market. This success stands as a testament to the long-standing trust, adaptability, and shared values that drive our economic ties. This success has been replicated by others as well to different degrees, but the common aspect remains. The critical point is to understand local workforce dynamics, regulatory frameworks, and cultural integration. Today, there is rapid economic transformation happening in India. We are the fifth largest economy in the world, and by most estimates, will become the third largest economy by the end of this decade. India is home to a large, aspirational, and rising middle class. We are home to the largest and youngest workforce in the world. We have the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. We are rapidly evolving into a global center for research and development, and the ease of doing business has seen continuous improvement. In short, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi had once put it, India today is a land of opportunities. And I'm happy to note that these opportunities are being seen and recognized by companies the world over, including by Japanese companies. The experience of Japanese companies who have invested in India has only been positive. Surveys by JETRO and the JBIC consistently rate India as the most optimistic destination for Japanese companies. For those who are still considering getting into this market, as well as those seeking to expand their existing business, it is indeed imperative to recognize the unique legal, social, and economic characteristics that shape India's labor market. Beyond labor frameworks, what truly makes a difference in industrial relations is the ability to imbibe and integrate the best of both worlds. While India values entrepreneurial spirit, ambition, and adaptability, Japan is globally recognized for its work ethics, precision, and long term commitment to quality. We had an event at the embassy last week where a panel discussed ways to unlock new possibilities in our economic partnership. And one of the ways to do that, which came about during the discussion, was to really understand and respect each other's cultures, which makes moving into a new market that much easier. In this context, I believe today's seminar will serve as a guiding tool for greater collaboration, deeper understanding, and long-term industrial growth between India and Japan. I encourage all participants to actively engage in the discussions, exchange experiences, and contribute to this evolving dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madhusudan. I now request Mr. Kenichi Ayukawa, Executive Vice President, Suzuki Motors Corporation, to deliver the keynote address.
皆様、こんにちは。スイカ株式会社の鮎川
Everybody,
でございます。
I'm Ayukawa from Suzuki Corporation. Today, I'm going to talk about IR and also the other human resource. So understanding industrial relations and human resource management in the Indo-Japanese context. From the 2003 to 2022, for about 10 years, I was the other MD of Multi Suzuki, and the Shiriki's son, and was at the time of in charge of HR. During that time, IR in Japan means investor relations, but industrial relations in India, not relation with the investors. So the communication with the workers and also the human resource management is how to manage staff. So these are topics of today of myself. In the first half, I'm going to talk about about the yeah what's happening in India, the Suzuki in India from the 1982 over 43 years. This is a Suzuki Corporation. This is the brief picture of Suzuki. 1920, this was established, and 72,000 global staff we have. The sales is 5 trillion 374 billion yen in the fiscal year of 2024. The headquarters is located in Hamamatsu City, and in total 119 group companies we have. So you remind Suzuki when it comes to India and vice versa. So looking at the chart, so consolidated sales is the other 5,340 74 billion, 42% from India, and in the four wheels and the two wheels are our main product. 56% of the four wheels, the sales come from India, and for two wheels, around 40% from India. So India is very, very important for Suzuki, so you can understand it well. This graph, especially four wheel cell. In 1982, we got into the Indian market. And since then, we are the leader in the industry, and we secure the positioning in India. So the success in Indian four wheels markets are talked a lot. And in 1983, we started the production first. 852 the units, and there are only 1% market share. But then we enjoyed this over 60% of the market share. In 1990s, a lot of the other industries are open to overseas players, so we dropped share a little bit, but still we keep the 40% of market share, keeping the number one position in it. In 2024, Up to the third quarter, four wheels, 40% market share, 1.24 million in India. And also what we worked is because of the request from India, not only the domestic sales in India, but also the export from India, make in India. This is a slogan of the Indian government. According to the slogan, we increase the export from India from 2021. So more than 200,000 units exported. So it's the other exported equivalent to around 2%. In India, a lot of regulations about cars and vehicles. They are sophisticated pretty much, and also the safety regulation is high as in the EU. So the cars manufactured in India can be exported to different places in the world. Actually, to Japan, cars are exported from India. SUV Fronters, made in India, launched in Japan last year. It was well accepted, and the back order was the around 10,000 units. It's a great success. And this January, made in India, Jimny 5 doors. This is a no model called in Japan. It's launched in Japan, and 18,000 were the planned units, but the back order is 50,000. So this is the pretty higher than we expected. So we are now adjusting the production. Also, in the second half of this year, this is the first time for Suzuki EV. This is a EV made in first EV will be manufactured in India in the second half of this year in order to deploy to the world, including the European market. This is our plan. So this year is a very challenging year for Suzuki. Formerly, there was a big question mark that something made in India, but in terms of regulation and quality, so the level of made in India products are pretty high, and we would like to deploy and sell made in India vehicles in the world. So this is a Indian market prospect. We can expect a lot of growth. In 2022 August, Prime Minister Modi said at the Independence Day, in the next 25 years, this is the prosperity of day. So these were the words used by himself. 2047, this is the 100th commemoration of the independence of the India. So towards 2047, India will continue to grow. And 25-year roadmap, including the industry. So how to attain this goal? Towards and India is now going steadily towards such the target GDP will be the 10 times, and also the industry wise the performance will be 15 times. So we have to catch up with the growth of India in order to deploy a lot of different things and to make their contribution to India. Vehicles in and 1 million units we sold, but in 2047, 15 million and 20 million units we are going to sell. Towards that goal, Suzuki right now has the four wheels production capacity, 2.2 million units. In the first half of 2030, we want to expand it to the other 4 million production capacity. So there are two more 1 million units capacity and factories we want to set up. Haryana, for example, Karukoda. So the top on the left-hand side, this is the in March of the 2025, the first factory started operation 250 the other thousand the unit capability and want to expand the production capacity more on the left hand side. So this is the other something on the right hand side top. This is the factory Delhi next to Delhi glucon. So glugram, this is a place of the other production site, and right now it has the 0.5 million, and also 30 kilometers south of the other glugram, there is the other another factory has a 0.9 million unit of the production. This is the other Gujarat, and right bottom left bottom. This is a Gujarat. This is the western side of India and close to Pakistan. There is a 750,000 and the production capacity it holds, and we are going to expand 250,000 more. And the first EV by Suzuki will be manufactured in a Gujarat factory to be exported to Japan and Europe and other countries in the world. I explained what's happening and also what happened in Suzuki. So this is the main topic of today, human resource management. So I'd like to introduce our activities. India has a lot of the other human resources, 1.4 billion people, including the excellent people and the Indian staff and the Indian engineers. We'd like to hire them as much as possible. For example, with IIT and IIM, such universities, we have some contract of the internships, and 30 some people have experienced internship, and some of them joined Suzuki and others, not working for other companies. And also Maruti Suzuki is our subsidiary, and we have 3,000 engineers in this company, and we bring them to Japan for rather the other training. Rather than the other training, we ask them to work in Japan. So we combine Japan and India to develop products and also the designing and the production activities for certain amount of time. The other 2 years, they work in Japan and experience some process in Japan and bring it back to India to deploy into the production and development activities. Not only the development, but also the production engineers. Also, in order to set up new factories and also the production lines, we'd like them to learn a lot in Japan and bring what they learned in Japan into India. So this is the activities of ourselves. On average, every year, 200 to 300 Indian people come to Japan, Hamamatsu City, and 1 to 2 years are spent by them and go back to India. Some of them, they bring their children, are present. So 150 family members of such the other employees are in Japan. A lot of them have the other small children. However, we have not the other found the good education facility besides Tokyo. So the other we are now working on the other, yeah. setting up some education facility for their families, and IIT and IIM, so Indian Institute of Technologies and the technological companies, we started to hire the Indian people graduated from such Indian college or universities. And around 30 has already started their career in Japan. How to utilize Indian human resources. This is a focus of attention of ourselves, and we have Multi Suzuki in India, and through such the other facility, we would like to support their career and help them step up themselves. Indian people are very hungry, and they have the high aspiration to develop themselves. So we want to meet their such aspiration, and as one of the important points of human resource management. Also, looking at the other companies' trend, every year we renew our program every year. So this is what we've done and doing in human resource management. And one more point in the industrial relations, IR, Maruti Suzuki, in terms of the IR, had a struggling experience, very hard experience. 2017 in July in Manesal factory, there was a violent incident happened, and one of the employees died, and around 100 employees were injured. And after a lot of the analysis, communication was not enough between the workers and between the workers and the managements. So this should be the biggest reasons of this incident. I joined Maruti Suzuki 2003, and I worked with the 3D Kisan, and I tried and checked how to improve the working environment. What is most important is have the good communication. Formerly, we had the communication between the worker delegates and the management every 2 or 3 months, but we improved and we had the such kind of the communication every week, including the top management. In myself, I always visit the other every month, visit the 3 factories, have the communication with young people and explain what they company and requested them their cooperation and help. By understanding each other, we can communicate well and to understand the status of the each side well. So I always said that we are on the same ship. If the ship sinks, we could be put on a great trouble. So we have to do something in order to avoid such dire situation. Yeah, of course, the salary negotiation was very, very tough. And for example, I had to explain. So looking at the market trend, this is not the right level. Such kind of the conversation we had, and if their request was very, very high, I said, oh, it's impossible. And if the other hurdle is a little bit high, I replied that, yeah, okay, let's try it. Including the family members, I'd like them to understand the company. And on Saturdays, so family visited to the factories. We planned, and they brought their fathers and the brothers to show what they are doing at the Maruti Suzuki, and to enhance their sense of belonging. Also, the other to recognize that we are one of the members of the big family. And also the family day was held to invite their family members as a festival to exchange to each other through such activities and events. And after 2012, we didn't have the other big trouble, and the other my successor had continued the close communication to manage industrial relations. One example is during my days in the other India, one of the suppliers had a fire and their factory stopped for 2 weeks. The months of the fire, we planned a maintenance shutdown in our factories. So there was the difference of the 2 weeks. But if the goes as it is, we wouldn't be able to open the other factory and could have the other big loss. So we should accelerate the timing of a maintenance shutdown by 1 week or 2 weeks. And during the time, they plan the journeys and the travels with their families. But just a few weeks before the maintenance shutdown, it was very difficult to change it, but when we explained it, labor union understood it. Oh, this is a dire situation of the company, so we have to help the company. We will cooperate with the company, so they understand and accepted to change the maintenance shutdown timing. And after that, and we got together and also the other cooperate to make a recovery of the loss. And after that, we made the better performance than planned and expected. So in this respect, the communication is very, very important. So this is not just Japan or India or Indonesia. So we have to do it everywhere. We needed to raise awareness and have to enhance the other understanding that we are in the same ship. So we are going to hire a lot of the people because we will expand our production capacity up to 4 million units. So learn the past struggling experience. We needed to utilize such lessons in the future. There should be a lot of advice from the other experts today. But anyway, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation.
Namaskar. Before I start my presentation in Japanese, I would like to sincerely thank the Ambassador, Mr. Sibi George, for encouraging us and for permitting us to hold this seminar here, Mr. Madhusudan for finding the time to come and address the gathering, Ms. Chakravarti and her colleagues for making excellent arrangements for facilitation of this program, and above all, Mr. Ayukawa for traveling all the way from Hamamatsu and delivering the keynote address.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I'll be speaking on the theme understanding and working with the Indian workforce. And I would like to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and experience. And I also, for those of you who are participating today, we thank you very much for sparing precious time. And this presentation is based on my experience. And I hope that this is going to be useful for you. And then with this, I'd like to start my presentation. Now, My Japan journey was 37 years as a student, employee, and advisor, which changes something that we cannot avoid. It's been 37 years since I landed in Japan in 1988. And I started as a student and then as an employee and finally as a legal and business advisor, primarily to the Japanese companies. Each phase provided me precious opportunities to discover the world outside India through my personal interactions and evolve as not only as a professional but as a human being as well. This cross-cultural journey taught me to recognize and accept change as an inevitable aspect of life, and also to see oneself as a catalyst of change and not as a victim of change, which certainly is a very empowering experience. Now, what to expect from this presentation? Today's presentation is not about Indian labor laws and their interpretations, but consists of my observations made during my interactions with the Japanese clients and their employees. And this presentation is based on our degree of their recognition of the need to understand the environment in which this interaction takes place. And also, we are to understand the consequences of inadequate response to socioeconomic and regulatory changes in India. And then there are some suggestions for making the interactions with the Indian working force more productive and harmonious. And then there is a focus on expectations from the Japanese side. Today, I am addressing a Japanese audience. Looking back at a period of tumultuous changes and transformations, looking back, one realized that the past 3 decades have indeed been a period of unprecedented changes and transformation. A new world order, economic growth in emerging economies, with significant growth in emerging economies has led to increased regional influence. And these economies are playing a more prominent role in global markets and geopolitics. Assertion for recognition and empowerment. Emerging economies, governments are asserting themselves globally for greater recognition and influence. And workers are able to feel the global trend, and there is new culture and identity. And now there's been a shift to the global economic and political dynamics. And for the future, now there will be the integration with the workforce with the required understanding of their behavior in the context of the changing socioeconomic landscape. And now there have been some changes in India in the past 30 years. And then here are what has taken place. Number one, witnessed tremendous economic growth and the creation of a huge domestic market. India has emerged from being a poor third world country to being the fifth largest economy. Number two, witnessed the rise of a gigantic middle class with its aspiration for upward mobility. And number three, we witnessed the creation of a young and qualified workforce looking for opportunities for material and professional growth. And then also there have been some changes in Japan. And number one, prolonged slowdown and shrinking of the domestic market. Number two, shrinking and aging population affecting supply of adequate labor force. Number three, the consequent necessity for the Japanese industry to look for growth opportunity abroad. And then Japanese industry is increasingly seeking the opportunities in outside of Japan. And here's a pertinent question. How successful is the India-Japan partnership? Now, it seems that we are natural business partners, but then how successful are we? Now, Japanese investment in India is number 5
But then in order to strengthen our partnership, we need more concrete measures. And of course, we do have the brightest prospect today. And then what needs to be done? We need to change perceptions, not in tune with the changing times. Now, I think that now, ever since I started this journey, we often emphasize too much about the distance, physical distance. But then this has been making a great impact on materialization of the business potential between India and Japan. And now we need to seek some common grounds. And we have to recognize India as the country of the business opportunities. And it's not so much about the social, economic, or cultural diversity, but we are to focus on strategic benefit. And then diversity is something inevitable for the society and the culture of India. And it's not something to be concerned about. But instead, this is something for us to consciously understand through proactive efforts. And now, in my experience, sometimes when you are not familiar with a certain culture, you may develop a fear. But then there are the ways to build close relationships. And by interacting directly, you may try something that was not familiar to you before to gain understanding. And then this is about creating familiarity on a social level. And through the exchange program, we may enhance exchanges on a school or university level. And then we can use textbooks to gather information. And then print media or digital media too, that's the way to disseminate more proactive, positive information. And then on an industrial level, there are also the things we can do in our workplace and also outside the working hours. We can increase opportunities to communicate. And in a third, planned visits, we can experience the way employees live. And also by visiting different areas in India, we can understand India's diversity. And then induction program for the Japanese employees or Japanese culture understanding program for the Indian employees. And with this, now I think that Japanese experts will be able to understand the following. Now, depending on our region, the way the workforce think or act may be different. And then also family and social status and religion that are indispensable from the individual identity. And then there's also diverse rules and regulations, and also there's an advantage in knowing the language and traditions. And there's something I learned from the Japanese traditional tea ceremony, sado, and flower arrangement. And I participated in these sessions, and then I benefited a lot both at work and in my private life. And from the chado or the tea ceremony, and by picking up the tea ball and appreciating its beauty, we know that it's a ceremony, and that's very similar to the way we live our lives. And then there are some concerns that may derive from India-Japan relationships. But then this experience actually helped me to seek for the solutions. And then about the flower arrangement, I took lessons at the Sugetsu Club. And now in Japan, sometimes the individuals choose to sacrifice themselves, but in India, it's more individualistic. But then I think the ikebana or the flower arrangement in Japan is very much harmonious, and then w- they they are arranged in such a way you can get the best of the flowers and the leaves. And then that means there is this harmony, and still you can see the individuals inside. And so that is the ideal blend. And number two, And for the branches, in order to protect them and from breaking, you would use the water and to increase flexibility. So this is similar to the education to create the capacity to be accepted. And then if there is not enough flexibility, then by introducing a new philosophy, then it may create some conflict. And my cultural communication experience is maybe explain the word kirei or beautiful. And this is the margin of the beauty and order. And it helps to understand this particular concept. And then in order to create the ideal relation, where there is this 5S system that I come across. And just like my culture experience, the Japanese expats in India are to understand Indian language or yoga, Ayurveda, or classical music or dance, cricket. And I think that will help them to understand the cultural diversity of India and also the way the workforce think. And success of the adventure depends on the strength of the relationship. And now there are some things that we should be cautious about. Now, creation of the right relationship and the selection of the right employees in India. And now, especially for the management level, and to ensure long-term and productive relationship. It is important, and because oftentimes the communications down the management level between India and Japanese, and also they're responsible for being a bridge between the management and the workers, and and then especially these are the points.
And also the knowledge of the socio-economic structure of the region where the businesses to be located, knowledge of the local language of the region, knowledge of the Indian legal and regulatory environment. So the yeah, how the information is trustful, so the background check is required in Japan. So the selection of light Indian employees in Japan for the Indian ventures. So while selecting Indian employees in Japan for managing Indian ventures, and besides educational qualification, fluency in Japanese language and technical experience in Japan, it is very critical to ascertain so capability to independently set up and manage a business in Japan. And the second is the knowledge of the socio-economic structure of the region where the venture is to be located. And the third is the knowledge of the local language of the region. And the fourth is the knowledge of the Indian legal and regulatory environment. And the sustaining a relationship. So continuity and relationships in the required to facilitate so that the bond and with the organization and making a fruitful contribution to the growth of the organization. Second, ensuring consistency in implementation of policies and systems. However, in the case of Japanese businesses in India, this long-term continuity is often hindered because of first, short term of the Japanese expert employees of 3 years or earlier transfer to another location. Second, a higher attrition rate among the India employees. And consequence of short tenure of Japanese expert employees. First, the inability to grasp Indian and Japanese socio-economic sensitivities, lack of independent decision-making, over-reliance of a few India employees, lack of managerial experience and pressure. Critical decisions may conflict with the larger organizational interests. Third, compliance management and the internal control system often lack priority due to time consequence. Fourth, absence of sufficient internal system lead to personality-driven management, creating anxiety among senior management. And also the compliance violation is found, but the strategic uh, decision making is not well made, and also the proposal is not made well, and also the lack of systematic supervision led to undetected non-compliance by labor contractors, increase in labor cases filed by contract workers. So such kind of the law cases has been increasing in India. Three, inconsistent implementation of statutory obligations such as constitution of sexual harassment committees across all local locations, and also absence of internal control systems facilitated the financial non-compliance. Inadequate systems for information processing led to confidential data leaks, and it has the bad impact to the profit of the company and the attrition of the Indian employees. In my interaction with the Indian employees, the primary concerns which make them look for alternative other than better monetary compensations are lack of communication caused by limited opportunities to interact with the Japanese seniors. Second, slow decision-taking process and lack of clarity on implementation of the decision taken. Third, conflict of opinions due to cultural factors. Fourth, lack of participation in the decision-making process. Five, inadequate recognition of their competence and aspiration. How to ensure continuity and consistency? Irrespective of the attrition of the Japanese and the Indian workers, we needed to set up the system to consistent process. So participate in the decision making and also identify the other capable Indian workers and also the other participating into the decision making. More specifically, the selected Indian employees and the Japanese experts will set up a committee and to have the regular meeting to propose their decisions to the upper management, including the vendor selection, procurement, and budget allocation management, compliance management system, and also the other internal investigation and the fringe benefits, and also HR policy, CSR, and inclusive in the participating decision making. And the above inclusive and the participative decision making has a following advantages. And the first one is depending on the other important information in appropriate decision making will cause the other complicated law issues, but yet we can prevent it. And the internal control system and also the other such process should be made. And also the other strategic decision making will have the systematic consistency. And also, in order to make the stronger bonding, we'll have the chance of exchange, and it's easy to evaluate themselves, and it's inevitable to cut the number of Japanese employees, but from the SMEs of Japan, that they can the control, even though they have the smaller number of the Japanese workers. And the short term, and they needed to the other make a good performance, and the experts have the other have caused a lot of confusion that the other where the other employees have to consult with, but by making the manual, this kind of the problems can be the other solved, and it's easier to make the decision, and also the financial important decision making will have the transparency, and irrespective of the attrition of the Indian and the Japanese employees, systematic inconsistency will be cured. So whistleblowing in Japanese, Indian, the law of the labor, the whistleblowing is not the must item for the Indian companies, but more and more companies think that it is necessary to set up whistleblowing process. However, these conditions are required first. The certain law firm should be selected as the consultancy, and also the responsible person can understand the so how is the important to accept such the claims, and the information should be the kept confidential, and also the native lawmakers the handle such the incidents in our associates and also in our organization. And also the professional consultants should help who understand the practice of Japan and India, and also in order to understand the secure the definition of the rights and the obligations. Also, the other to prevent the ignoring of the stakeholders relationship. So severing of relationship. Severing of relationships when the things go wrong has been a concern area in the Indo-Japanese context. Most of the times the complication arises because right legal advice is not taken before terminating the relationship. Termination at times are done first. Without consideration, the softer option of warning letters and monetary fine. And also the transfer suspension and so on, retaining the possibilities for survival of the relationship through second chance. And also the appropriate process described on the employment agreement was not followed. In that case, the law case could take place. And at that time, we needed to the yeah don't enough the proof was prepared for several years, a lot of efforts, and also the other time could be spent so that at early moment it is critical to have the advice from the legal experts. So what is important is that what is the ahead for the India-Japan partnership. As observed earlier, India-Japan partnership prospects are brighter than in the last 3 decades. Make in India initiatives align with industry needs in both countries. Japanese SMEs benefit by setting up production bases in India, accessing expanding the market by producing in India at competitive costs. And Indian industry gains from technology infusion and funding, enhancing production capabilities. However, success stories like Maruti Suzuki require hand-holding for the integration into India's socio-economic, cultural, and regulatory environment. And also focus needed on post-merger integration, PMI, for smoother transition and collaborations. So the other how to create this integration, the Shinzenbi, the ancient Indian concept of Satyam Shivam Sundram, can be of immense guidance in achieving integration at human resource management level in the Indo-Japanese context. Truth to discover and focus on the holistic truth and not to be associated by the fragmented reality created by the superficial culture dissimilarities. Number two, to base one's assessment on our direct international interaction and collaboration, and exercise of one's discretion and not be influenced by experience of others or believe in information which can be biased or outdated. Collective benefits to develop collective vision which encompasses aspiration of both management as well as employees. Inclusive management based on a partitionally decision making can create a liquidity synergy between the Japanese employers and their Indian workers. Beauty to actualize the beauty of oneness and coexistence by merging of distinct cultural identities into a harmonious blend. As mentioned earlier, religious practices are an integral part of life of most Indians. Browsing and praying before the statue of Ganesha while entering an office or a factory is a common sight. Prayers are believed have profound effects. I would like to end this session by introducing you all to a simple yet beautiful prayer that most of your Indian employees would be familiar with. This ancient prayer in Sanskrit is for creation of harmony between a guru and his discipline, but can very easily be invoked for creation of harmony through coexistence between the Japanese employers and their Indian employees.
Kami ga watashi tachi o mamotte kudasaru you ni, Kami ga
May God
watashi tachi o
nourish
yashinatte
us.
kudasaru you ni, watashi tachi ga
May we work
kyobarite
together
hatarakeru
in
you ni,
harmony.
watashi tachi no
May our efforts be mutually beneficial. May our endeavor causes no hostility. Truth, collective benefits, and beauty will bring in a venture business success in India. Exchange with Indian workers will be rich experience like my journey in Japan and India. I pray for it. In conclusion, I'd like you to use your never give up stance and fighting spirit by hope in Japan-India relationship. Let me borrow some words from a well-known song of Q Sakamoto. Let's look up. Let's look up with high aspiration. With high aspiration, let's strive together. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Vidyalankar. Next, I request Mr. S.Y. Siddiqui, Consultant, Dua Consulting, ex-Executive Director in HR and COO at Maruti Suzuki India Limited, to present on creating a healthy HR and IR environment in India.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and special personal thanks to Ayukawa-san for accepting our invite and joining this seminar. Also, my colleague Kojima-san, welcome. And my Japanese is not good at all, so I'll be speaking in English. My apologies. Perhaps most of the gist of industrial relations have already been very simply explained by Ayukawa-san, but I think I'll be talking both on industrial relations as well as HR management, white collar, a little bit of experience sharing from my career. Next slide, please. I think deepest homage, first of all, to late Mr. O. Suzuki, former chairman of Suzuki Motors, Japan. I think a kind of legend in the industry, very well respected and recognized in India. Maybe the kind of guiding light for this success of Maruti Suzuki in India over the last 40 years plus. Perhaps when we are looking at personal experiences, my learning, getting this opportunity to work with senior colleagues from Suzuki, Japan, including late Mr. O Suzuki. I think several occasions where we could interact and maybe look at his vision and the way he managed things, the way he looked at the future, big learning for our career. I think the business success and growth of Maruti Suzuki in India is based on the harmonious relationships created between the Japanese management and the Indian workforce, despite different kind of social structure, cultural factors, and education systems. The key learning has been the top vision, uh, maybe the kind of leadership vision which Mr. O Suzuki had about this company in India, the shared goal shared by all people, all 10,000 people at that point of time, and also maybe a kind of a unique work culture, some learning from Japan, as Mr. Madhusudan said, some learning from Japan and some learning from local context of India, define the work culture of Maruti Suzuki and the determination to succeed. I think one important perspective I would like to share is that when I joined Maruti in 2003, there were Japanese top leaders, part of the management, and there were Indian top leaders, part of the management. I think that was the recipe for success. The policy connect came from the Japanese leaders from Suzuki, Japan, and the decisions for local issues to be handled was done by Indian professionals. Next slide, please. We are looking at the kind of social structure, cultural upbringing, educational structure, regional and also religious, Alok Khan was just mentioning, religious diversity of Indian workforce. It is quite different than what we see things happening in Japan. And somewhere perhaps this also impacts the aspirations and behavior of Indian workforce quite differently. And maybe somewhere managing this with a better kind of sensitivity and understanding is perhaps the best way of success. And one example perhaps when I can share is that at Maruti, when we have the young engineers, 300, 400 young engineers joining every year, we have to put a lot of effort for their engagement with the company in terms of a kind of a very specific, well-defined induction training of almost 6 months, looking at short-term projects, maybe looking at kind of communication forums with these young boys, so that boys and girls, so that they are engaged and connected with the company. On the blue collar side, perhaps a lot of emphasis for the new joining workers is given on outbound training, maybe team training, and explaining to them the competitive side of the business, as Ayuka Khan was saying. And perhaps this effort is required again and again repeatedly. And somewhere, perhaps we have looked at these kinds of training programs for the blue collar from industrial relations perspective have been very successful in creating a strong connect with the company. Next slide, please. The Indian employee at work is an integrated personality impacted by the social structure, the region from where they are coming in, like Haryana are different, Gujarat is different. We are looking at also a kind of a religion impact, but biggest impact is the family and the relatives on this worker who comes to work for Maruti Suzuki, or the white collar who comes to work for Maruti Suzuki. While in Japan, we see Japanese people are more role based personality linked to the company identity, not social structure, not family, not religion, not region. This is a very clear difference in our thinking. And therefore, as Ayuka Khan was mentioning, organizing annually every year a family day, bringing all the families to the company is a very important kind of IR activity. Very important action on which perhaps company connect, commitment, and ownership is created. And somewhere perhaps we are looking at also connecting the company with families with other schemes like kind of scholarship for employees' children or the kind of welfare programs aimed at housing, medical. So somewhere perhaps we keep it in mind that it is not only the employee but also their families we need to connect strongly. Next slide, please. We are looking at the Japanese urbanization and its common impact on Japanese workforce is a rather unifier, similar kind of impact. While the rural background of our shop floor workers in India is basically creating a kind of economic disparity with the white collar managerial staff which comes from urban centers. That's a kind of a little issue between the white collar and blue collar in India. And this economic disparity really is really overcome by Maruti Suzuki by defining a common kind of HR program policies, the culture, maybe the common uniform, common canteen, kind of common transport, and that kind of common medical benefit, leave policy. So somewhere perhaps we are looking at this blue collar workforce coming from mostly villages and maybe lower in education and maturity, and therefore perhaps it is reflecting in their aspirations and behavior compared to the white collar employees. And there is one important perspective here that unlike Japan, in India, only blue collar industrial worker can become part of the union. Not engineers or assistant manager or deputy manager, they can become part of the unions. So that is not permissible as per Indian labor laws. So when we talk of union in India, we talk of industrial relations in India, then it is only primarily blue collar workers who work at the shop floor. Perhaps one example which we can look at this kind of integration with the kind of workers coming from the rural area, that maybe I think uh, kind of leave during the marriage season suddenly requirement goes up a few months in the year, and we have to really have a countermeasure plan for that. That is the kind of reality which we really face. Also, at the same time, they have this expectation that every 3 years they should get an opportunity to get next level promotion and a little salary jump. That is a kind of a normal process for, and therefore, a good performance management system, which is ensuring this kind of career progression for blue collar workers, will be helpful on industrial relations perspective. Recruitment of the right kind of professional for key positions like CHRO or CFO or CLO, Chief Legal Officer, as Alok San was also mentioning, I think is a very important perspective to select from the Indian professionals for any Japanese company which is operating into India. In Maruti Suzuki, all these key positions were being held by the Indian professionals, capable, trustworthy, and lot of competence on the job. And somewhere perhaps when we are looking at this process is involving 3 layers of interviews where we also cross-check the antecedent verification, previous career with the companies or whoever is being selected. So selection is not that easy and therefore perhaps very important for any Japanese company investing into India to look at the right kind of recruitment process, hiring process, and then also antecedent verification before making the final selection decision. We are also looking at one major focus of Maruti Suzuki was to maintain regular communication and consultation with the state government, district administration, including police, which will be extremely, extremely important for any kind of industrial relations incident which may happen, any issue which may happen. That kind of support from the government will be very critical. And therefore, it is recommended based on our experience that the Japanese companies must make this regular relationship and communication with the state government without any hesitation. Perhaps we are looking at our relationship and regular meetings with central government also, which has played a very important role over the success of Maruti Suzuki in the last 42 years. And perhaps one very pleasant thing was that 2022 August, we decided to celebrate 40 years of success of Maruti Suzuki in India. And at that point of time, I think this launch of 40 years success functions starting was done by none other than our uh, Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, from Gujarat with the Suzuki top management, Maruti Suzuki top management for almost 2 hours. And that kind of involvement and respect when he spoke with Mr. O Suzuki at that point of time, Mr. T Suzuki, Aigawa-san, Taiguchi-san, at that point of time, very highly about Suzuki Motors Japan and their kind of contribution to the auto industry in India. We are also looking at one very important perspective from our experience: focus on CSR contribution to the villages and local communities surrounding our factories, both in Haryana first and then now in Gujarat, has been extremely critical for managing very good industrial relations for Maruti Suzuki. And perhaps when we look at some such connect, even before the Gujarat plant was started, I think this CSR initiative in the Gujarat region was given top priority at that point of time. Now, the kind of projects which we do for villages, they can be maybe providing infrastructure to the school at the village, maybe providing clear, healthy drinking water, maybe repair of roads. Some of these projects, depending on what the need is where Maruti Suzuki has contributed to the CSR projects and created immense goodwill, which is extremely helpful on maintaining good industrial relations. At Maruti Suzuki, some examples I wanted to share: when we hire fresh young engineers and MBAs, I think it is a kind of a process which is very competitive. So it has to be really based on what kind of offers in terms of salary and benefits and career being offered to these youngsters in the colleges. What other companies are, planning around that market trend. Maruti Suzuki decides the policy. What will be the hiring salary for a fresh engineer, for example, 600,000, 700,000. So it is very competitive. And the other part is that designations in India play a very big role. So a designation of assistant manager is more respectable in the social structure than engineer. These are small sensitivities which can help manage white collar engagement, maybe development and retention. And that is the experience of Maruti Suzuki. Also, whereas we have talked of high attrition rates in India, unlike Japan, in India, attrition rates in manufacturing sector can be hovering around 12-15%. In IT sector, it can be ranging between 25 to 30%. In other FMCG, different kind of sectors, maybe 20%. So perhaps that is a kind of a process we should understand. So nothing is like permanent employment from day of joining to the day of retirement like Japan. Doesn't happen in India. So perhaps Maruti Suzuki, we were able to maintain about 6% attrition rate uh, with lot of engagement activities, lot of focus on different kind of career options, job rotations, and somehow looking at the local needs and aspirations of the young executives and engineers. Also, perhaps next slide, maybe I am talking of attrition is not only auto industry to auto industry. Attrition can be auto industry to IT, auto industry to consulting, financial kind of institutions. So in India, this kind of crisscrossing is one very different kind of trend than normally what Japanese companies will expect. And I remember some of my Suzuki Japan colleagues asking me whether your people are joining another auto company. Maybe yes, maybe no. So they were joining financial sector, they were joining consulting companies, they were joining IT companies. So it's quite a different perspective in terms of talent landscape in India. Talent management therefore becomes very critical. Therefore, competitive salary and benefits become a very important factor. So annual survey of similar companies is done, and based on that, we decide our policy on where we would like to have compensation and benefit of Maruti Suzuki. Perhaps we are also looking at very good professional agencies like Ewan Hewitt or Omam Consultants, others who are capable of doing the compensation and benefit surveys every year and sharing some projections that how much 8%, 9%, 10%, that could be the kind of trend of salary increases every year in India, besides the variable pay. The variable pay is separate. Attrition normally in India is now happening at the junior levels, people with maybe 20, 30, 32 kind of age group. The more senior people become, then it becomes a more stable career. So this analytics also is helpful, that lot of engagement and focus is to be done on the young people. For example, in Maruti, the older people, mature people, expect HR to get, kind of post-retirement medical. But when we look at the younger people, they are more looking at cash variable pay, bonus, maybe every 3 months, every 6 months. That's the kind of big difference between expectations. Some other examples to talk about is in terms of paired leadership, which we experienced between Suzuki and Maruti Suzuki. Suzuki Japan talked of this concept. Paired leadership means there is a Japanese leader and there is an Indian leader. They both manage particular business vertical. So in my case, when we look at HR and other functions, perhaps one Japanese colleague was with me at the top. So he will bring in the connect from Suzuki Japan, and I will look after the Indian issues and manage those things independently. That's the kind of paired leadership concept. And I think this kind of org structure can work very well in India. So you can have a balanced, as Mr. Madhusudan said, you can have a balance of the kind of Japanese perspective and also local realities, maybe regulatory realities, economic realities, maybe social structure realities, which can be then combined for decision making. Kind of senior Indian professionals that have played that kind of role at Maruti Suzuki and always bridging this gap to bring this balance, what Mr. Madhusudan was referring to. And I think that's the success, one of the success factors in case of Maruti Suzuki. Next slide. Maybe I'll quickly talk about some learnings from my career, 20 years with Maruti Suzuki, and great opportunity working with Ayukawa-san for almost 10 years. Kojima-san also here, long years of association. One fact is 2003 September when I joined, I think the first kind of message I would like to share, I was given complete independent responsibility for managing the human resources function in Maruti. When I say independent responsibility means all decision making to be done by me. I did had a Japanese joint managing director who was my boss at that point of time. The other part is that including my interaction with the state government of Haryana was completely my responsibility. So there was no Japanese involvement there. That means this one responsibility, trust, empowerment to an Indian local professional was the perhaps one key success factors. The Indian context to a great extent was very well understood by that kind of top leadership in India, including our Japanese bosses, as well as Suzuki Japan. And to a great extent, maybe functions like HR and IR, finance, taxation, legal were led by Indian professionals. Plant operations, where a lot of workers are and Indian situations are involved, suppliers and everything, was again managed by Indian professionals. Whereas engineering, supply chain, perhaps a bigger contribution from Suzuki, Japan was coming in. One big kind of learning is to perhaps always look at bridging this gap. So a lot of consultation between us and our counterparts in Suzuki Japan, and maybe meetings at least twice a year was perhaps one key reason for very good understanding and good balance coming out of it. Huge credit maybe to the top leadership of Suzuki Japan, maybe to late Mr. O Suzuki, Mr. T Suzuki, who have created this balance, this respect. And Ayukawa-san was explaining this communication focus between the top leadership in Maruti Suzuki and the rest of the employees. I think to a great extent, communication between Suzuki Japan and Maruti Suzuki was also one very big factor of success. So big credit to Suzuki Japan headquarters. Perhaps also I look at the HR and IR policies and processes in the Indian context, which are driven by market trends and also the Indian social structure. And say, for example, kind of emotional expectations of Indian people. And salary review, as I said, in India will be hovering around 10-12%. Japan, we talk of 2%. So big difference between Japan and India in that context. But that 10-12% is not decided by the company alone. That 10-12% is decided by the kind of annual survey analytics, which are survey outcomes, projections, which are shared every year. Also, perhaps we are looking at, in case of blue collar workers, normally a 3-year wage settlement is enacted. Whereas I have heard many Japanese companies talking of a 1-year wage settlement. But the trend in India, experience in India is 3 years, and then you work quietly for 3 years without any confusion. Every year, if you have to do a compensation negotiation benefits with union, it requires a lot of time and lot of energy. So once in 3 years. And maybe perhaps when we are looking at the best way to manage the HR and IR function in the Indian context and to maintain the right balance between the best practices, uh, maybe in India, and also the learning from global, headquarters from Suzuki Japan. So there should be a kind of combination in my thinking. We are looking at maybe the HR policies for managerial employees, some examples in the Indian context. So at Maruti Suzuki, the HR leadership focus was on developing a positive, open, and team culture with learning from Indian context and also from Japanese work practice. I think you people must know that initially, when this company started, Mr. O Suzuki brought in some attendance machines, time machines, to really make people habitual of coming punctually on time to work. Maybe 1985, 86, somewhere. So slowly, some learning from Japan came in, and some learning from Indian context, from the Indian leaders came in. Mr. R.C. Bhargav, for example, talks about bringing this gradual shift into Maruti, becoming a unique work culture. Maybe competitive salary and benefit structure, I already talked of. Variable pay, very important perspective, almost 8, 9, 10% part of the salary is coming based on company performance and results. So people are excited, happy to do high performance. And perhaps there is a lot of opportunity for cooperation, changing things, union accepts, sometimes their request, we accept. So this kind of cooperation brings in the best of HR and IR in India. Lot of emphasis on people development, maybe through training initiatives, and also talent engagement, retention through PMS, maybe job rotations, career growth, and also something like company car policy. We being a car company, so quite at a young age, we were offering that company car, which became a very big attraction for people to stay with Maruti. So my only message is that perhaps we cannot take it for granted that once you have recruited some young people, they'll be staying with you for 25 years. No, I think we'll have to make a lot of effort on engagement, on retaining those people with the company. Also, perhaps we are looking at quarterly communication meetings, uh, tea group meetings, uh, tea and cookies where you talk to people freely. And we are looking at stay interviews compared to exit interviews. Maybe people who are working with us, we give time and kind of attention to them, to their sessions, part of the stay interviews. Maybe it's many such activities to engage them. Maybe some examples in terms of blue collar. We are looking at while hiring new workers, the principle of population mix. Maybe looking at a kind of ratio between regular workforce and temporary outsourced contractual workforce. What should be the ratio? 70-30, 65-35. So somewhere that clarity is required. When I talk of population mix principle, we should not have all workers from one area. Similar type of people we should not have. All local people we should not have. So population mix is different regions, different kind of religions, different kind of areas, different kind of skill, different kind of age. That will be good for a smooth industrial relation situation. Maybe training of frontline supervisors and managers will be critical. If they are good in people relations, you will be good in industrial relations as a company. In Maruti Suzuki's case, very high focus was on developing capability of supervisors. Every supervisor found very critical for managing almost 30, 40 workers of the company. And therefore, making them capable, that means bringing in good communication capability and good assessment capability. Obviously, some of this perspective I've already talked of competitive salary and benefits in case of a non-union environment, if there is no union. If there is union, there will be a kind of 3-year wage settlement. The 3-year wage agreement basically is the trend as I talked of in India. And at Maruti Suzuki, we have 3 unions. So with them, we do into a kind of an agreement for 3 years. So once in 3 years, a lot of emphasis on discussion, dialogue, and communication to decide what kind of salary increase, benefits, welfare programs we should do for our workers, part of this wage agreement. We are also looking at big focus on training our union representatives, including visiting Suzuki Japan here, showing them the business, making them understand what is competition, where Maruti Suzuki is. As Ayuka Khan was saying, a kind of a monthly communication directly led by the managing director. I think that is the key of managing very good industrial relations perspective. Some of these experiences, perhaps when we are looking at it, also involves young workers on at the shop floor, very high aspirations, just like white collar. They would also like to have best benefit of life, and therefore a lot of focus on internal communication. Maybe looking at grievance handling as a very very important process. Maybe sports, family visits to plant twice a month on Saturdays. I think creating this big connect with the company. And somewhere, the best of kind of HR and IR practices can fail. And we have faced that incident in 2012 in July. And we had this big violence by one of our plants. Rest everything was okay, but only one plant, Manesar at Haryana. And we dealt with very tough kind of situation at that point of time, but big learning. And I think big learning is more on focus on communication, communication and pulse reading. What we call at Maruti is the listening leadership. Leadership, whether Japanese or Indians, who can listen, who can read the pulse, who can take the employee feedback well, and then act upon it. And that is one big learning. Also, relationship with the state government of Haryana was very helpful in resolving that crisis very quickly. And now Manesar is one of the high performing plants, last almost about 11, 12 years for Suzuki Japan. And somewhere, maybe I think when we are looking at this understanding industrial relations and HR management perspective in the Indian context, I think we are looking at this big perspective of connecting with people. Maybe what we can do at Dua Consulting, I think a little brief glimpse in terms of HR and IR consulting support. I think one important perspective which we have realized at Maruti Suzuki is incoming Japanese who will be working for 3 years in India. I think their induction into the Indian social structure, culture, maybe 2 days, 3 days investment will be a very, very effective way of making them comfortable and aligning them with the local context. We're also looking at advisory and guidance on companies, org structure design, what works in India, what doesn't work in India, maybe talent landscape, recruitment process, and maybe we are also looking at some very practical perspective, maybe on industrial relations policy. If we start with that, any Japanese company will be very comfortable in terms of taking that way forward and step by step implementing. Advisory on dealing with trade unions is one area where Dua Consulting can support. And maybe also if there is any issue, any collective bargaining perspective, perhaps our guidance can be there for the companies which are interested. But I think when we look at Maruti Suzuki, when we look at last 42 years, and as Ayoka-san was saying that whether it is in India, whether it is Indonesia or China or US or Europe, I have worked in Italy also part of the Fiat group. I think when we look at labor unions, we should be aware of the need for communication, flexibility, maybe dialogue, and maybe sometimes facing a bit of a problem here and there. But that management capability is what perhaps is required in India also. So thank you for your patience time and thank you for your presence in today's seminar. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Siddiqui. I now request Mr. Shunsuke Inoue, partner, Hibiya Nakata Law Office, to present on M&A strategies and labor law compliance for Japanese companies in India.
皆さん、こんにちは。弁護士の井上俊介と申します。
My name is Shinsuke Inoue. I'm an attorney at law. I am an M&A expert. And my specialty area is the strategy and labor law compliance of Japanese companies in India. Today, I would like to share some examples of M&A of Japanese companies in India, and also the recent Indian labor law and labor law amendments, and also the key points for HR and labor due diligence. So these are the three major topics for me today. As we have been discussing for some time, India is a fast-growing market, and there are a number of Japanese companies who have made entries into India or look into the possibilities. But when it comes to HR and labor management, there is the federal laws and also the state laws. So that is a major difference from Japan. So it is important that we do understand these differences. And for the Japanese companies to execute their mandates in India, HR and labor due diligence is critical. And through this session, we are to better understand opportunities in India and also the importance of the labor laws and labor management and also the labor due diligence. So this is about the recent developments of M&As in India by the Japanese companies. Yes, next page, please. So this may be a bit hard to read. In Japan, the market is shrinking in general. So this in a backdrop, the Japanese companies are now executing mandates in global markets. And recently, there has been more activities in India. And now here are some examples of Japanese companies' M&As or investments. And the first one is by the Kubota, and they are making investments in multiple times and for the tractor manufacturer called Escorts. And now they are a subsidiary. The total investment is 94 billion rupee. This is equivalent to 130 billion Japanese yen. And Escorts has number 4 market share in India, and they are a traditional tractor company in India. And Kubota has been operating a joint venture factory in India with them. And then there's been a growing demand for the low price and durable tractors in India and other emerging countries. So that's the background behind this decision. And the second one is by the Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group. In 2021, they bought 74.9% of the shares in Fullerton, India at 200 billion yen. And that was a major entry by Japanese bank into the Indian market. And by acquiring the retail platform in financial areas, they are to accelerate their expansion in Asia. And now the company has become a wholly owned subsidiary. And so they are implementing the loan programs in regional India. And then this is by the Oryx. And now in 2001, they made investment into the Green Core Energy, that is a renewable energy major company, and they acquired 28% of the shares. And back then, Oryx did have the wind power business that's now integrated into the Green Core. So through the asset merger, the Green Core become 6.9 gigawatt capacity renewable energy company, and this is one of the biggest in India. And for Oryx, this is a part of the overseas expansion strategies in renewable. And now by investing into the Green Core, and they are to acquire stable income source. And then a SoftBank Group. Now through the Vision Fund in the past 5 years, they have been investing into the so-called unicorn companies in India. And here's one example. There's a company called Paytm. They are a major digital settlement company. And their parent company, they invested about $1.2 billion. And then they did make an additional investment afterwards. And then there is a hotel booking oil or the car service or the food service or logistics. There are a number of startups where they have invested into. And then there's Daikin Industries, the major air conditioning company. And they bought Stevens Industries 100%. And they are the major industrial HVAC company. And the amount is not disclosed, but that was the first time for Daikin, and they are to strengthen their business capabilities in India and also to be more price competitive. They made this acquisition. And this is just a part of the recent M&As. And then you can see the financial company and energy and the manufacturers. And there are a number of M&As in diverse industries. And this is not only about the capital injection, but also what it's done in a view of expanding businesses in India and also to acquire the customer base and certain technologies. And of course, the PMI process is the most important. That's post-merger integration process. And then HR and IR are the most important themes. And then now I like to take a look at our recent amendments in Indian labor laws. So there's a coexistence of the Indian labor laws. There's federal laws as well as the state laws. So that is a major difference between India and Japan. And now, according to the Constitution of India, the labor is regulated by the federal and the state government. So there are different laws. So because of that, for example, if a Japanese company is starting business in India, then not only the federal laws, but also they will have to conform to the state laws that they are to operate in. And then now the state laws may override the federal laws. So in many states, they do add some specific regulations. So this is similar to the ordinances in Japan. Like, for example, in a certain state, in order to fire somebody, they will have to consult with the union beforehand, but other states may not have such a requirement. So when starting businesses in India, then not only the national federal laws, but also the state laws will have to be confirmed as well. And another characteristic, now there are quite diverse laws that are in the labor management. And there are some labor-related laws, industrial dispute laws, or social security laws, or the minimum wage laws. So from different perspectives, they are protecting the rights of the laborers or the workforce. And then there's industrial relations code. And this stipulates the basics of the industrial relations. And there's a concept of the workman. And they are the ones who are protected under these laws. So the definition and the concept are explained, stipulated here. And then recently, there's been a movement to integrate these different laws and regulations. But later on, I will be talking more on this. Not everything has been enacted, so most of these laws are still to be enacted. So when executing M&As, then you will have to refer to the federal laws and state laws and also different codes and laws. And then you will have to keep in mind there is an amendment underway. So here's about most recent trend. Now, in India, there's been this movement to streamline or integrate these laws. Now, these are the ones from 2019 to 2020. And this wage law, and this is the integration of four wage-related laws. And now this is standardizing the wage and the bonus and the minimum wage. And then there's the industrial relations code. And this is about labor union and other two other laws. And in our workplace where there's over 300 workforce, and now labor conditions and the dispute management and labor union management are all stipulated under these laws. And then there is a code on social security. This is about social welfare, and there are 9 laws, and now they are integrated into the social security code. And this is about the benefit and for the pension fund or the retirement benefit. And then finally, there's occupational safety and health and working conditions code, and to ensure safety and working hours and annual leaves and overtime working hours. And now excluding a few, most of these laws are still not in effect, but there will be. So now we will have to keep in mind about the latest trend concerning these new laws. And then there are a few points on HRIR due diligence that we should be keeping in mind. Now, in M&As in India, HRIR due diligence is an important part of the process. And there are some similarities between India and Japan, but not everything is the same. So we have to have appropriate research, otherwise we will encounter unexpected circumstances. And now in India labor law, when it comes to dismissal, we are now oftentimes our workforce is very well protected. So especially dismissal is very strictly regulated. And written notice or the payment that is mandatory under the laws. And then also sometimes we'll have to obtain approval from authority before the executing the dismissal. And then also payment of the fees that is sometimes regulated, so that's also different from Japan. And then labor union activities are more active in India compared to Japan, and unions are more influential. So already during the M&A process, we should scrutinize the environment concerning the labor union. And then here's the checkpoints in HRIR due diligence. First of all, labor management of the contract. And now there are people who have different working conditions, legal conditions. So we'll have to check if they are legal or not. And also we'll have to check the contracts if they conform to the labor laws. And then about dismissal or restructuring regulations. As I said earlier, now in India, when the companies are bigger than a certain size, you will have to obtain approval from the state before executing any dismissal plans. So we'll have to carefully check any regulations. And then about the wage and welfare benefit also, we will have to check the legal conformity. And the minimum wage, but that's also different by sector and the state. So we'll have to accurately understand which standard is applicable. And then retirement fees and any compensation, those are also to be checked. And then about labor union impact or labor management agreement. Now, again, in India, labor unions are quite strong. So after the acquisition and for the purpose of the labor management, we will have to understand the level of influence by the labor union and also about the content of the agreement. And then finally, when Japanese companies are to acquire the companies in India, we should understand the difference in the culture and the custom. And now in Japan, we may be more meticulous when it comes to reporting or consulting, but that may not really work well in India. And as we've been hearing in other presentations, in India, there's diverse culture and also religion. And India is very big, so we also have to understand the differences by region. And no, if the Japanese companies can show that we do care, I think that will help us to establish the relationships based on trust with the Indian workforce. And then if we try to push the Japanese way, then that is only going to be negative. And specifically, even about the language, we are now business persons in India should be able to communicate in English. But in some places, some people may just speak the local languages. So when sending communications, we are now sometimes wish to be using the local language while using interpreters. And then by showing such an attitude, then we can get a sense of assurance or increasing engagement among the local employees, and that will help us to be successful in PMI process. And then finally, this is the summary of today's presentation. So first of all, in M&As in India, HRIR due diligence is inevitable. And also, there are many differences between India and Japan when it comes to labor laws, and also there's an important amendment taking place as of now. And then it's also important that we do work with the professionals or experts who know about the local environment for the station. And then also for the success of M&As, where PMI is important. And in order to plan for the PMI, we need to incorporate the viewpoint of the labor management. So that means we are to understand culture, local culture, and also the environment, and build the trust with the local employees. And in India, market is still growing, but then at the same time, in executing mandates, we'll have to understand some specific natures in HR and labor laws. So I hope today's presentation is of some help to you, and as you may expand more into India. So that's been a short speech, but this is all from myself. Thank you very much.
For Japanese companies in India by Mr. Kazuo Komaki, Managing Director, JAC Recruitment India Private Limited.
ちら今、音声フルになってますね。あ、大丈夫ですか？はい、聞こえますでしょうか？
Can you hear me? All right. Thank you for giving me the great opportunity. It's a great honor to me. I'm Komaki from the JSC Recruitment India. I'd like to spend the other 10 minutes for my presentation. Yeah. First of all, the other when I needed to the other visit Tokyo, I wanted to go Tokyo, but the other from the group run of the northern part of the India, I joined via the remote program. So let me explain the other our company. So we have the lot of sites in the world, and looking at that the slide, and you would be able to understand it that mainly we support Japanese companies getting into the overseas markets, and we provide the support and help to Japanese to deploy their business nationwide. Consultant number is 1600, and utilizing the global network, we are providing the support and the other help. I'm going to talk to India. A lot of the other things I'd like to share with you, but yet only 10 minutes I can spend, so the other some of the other aspects I'd like to share with you. This is the map of India. As you know, India has a land. It's a 9 times of Japan area, and it's very difficult to tell that India is this and that. Depends on the other region, languages, and the cultures, and the foods are totally different to each other. So the other different regions can be considered as different countries. So let me start from northern part. This is where I am now. So the central city is Delhi. 1,100 companies have got into the India, and among them, 800 Japanese companies are deploying their business in Delhi. And the second is the west area. The core city is Mumbai, and this is also the big market. So their GDP is as the highest Malaysia. Also, Ahmedabad is located in Gujarat state where Maruti Suzuki does their business. So the car industry is the main business in the industry. Also recently, so semiconductor business. A lot of the invitation to the semiconductor companies. Next is southern area, Bangalore, Chennai, main cities, and our southern side is located in this area. Bangalore is Indian Silicon Valley. So IT industry is accumulated, concentrated here. But unfortunately, so not a lot of the Japanese IT companies have got into the Indian company, Indian the other market. So Indian companies and also the other Western companies are main players in this industry. And also there is a headquarters of Toyota, and also the other lot of the other companies, car industry companies, have their business activities. And the last one is the other eastern side. We do not have the other, not a lot of the other Japanese companies, and sometimes the other very small number of the other recruitment demands by Japanese companies. And this shows the presence of Japan in India at present. This is the data of as of 2023. Around 1,400 Japanese companies play their business in India. So a little bit the other decline from the pre-pandemic level by 50 companies. But looking back at several years, a lot of the other Japanese companies are considering to get into the Indian markets. So 4 to 5 companies have approached us to give this the other explanation about the Indian markets, and also the other how is the presence of the Japanese people in Japan? How many Japanese people are working in India compared with other companies? The number is very low, around 8,000. So 8,000 people are living in India, but this number includes their family members. So actually, the number of workers is around 6,000. And looking at the other number, how it will change. So along with the other participation by the Japanese, the national resource, it's very difficult to hire someone who is working in India. They needed to the is in India, but they cannot find the appropriate human resources, so their plan could be the other slowed down in some cases. Now, let me focus on the other labor population in India. 2014, before the coming to India, I should have understood it around the time. And the Japanese companies say that the India have the lot of population, so that it should be easy to hire people in India. This is the other comments from Japanese companies, but actually the answer is no. The total number of people is the 1,430,000,000. However, the labor population, looking at it, the population bonus of the young people that in India, so the labor population is 589 million. Among them, the 63% farmers, and more than the those who are working for the other organization, more than 10 people, a pretty small percentage. More specifically, around 2.5% of the total population is working for the other organization with more than the other 10 people. And among them, the other 18 million people are employed by the government or the state-owned companies. So the 18 million among the 35 million people. So there's these 18 million people cannot seek the other job change. So there are 7 million people, but the other it's the other number of the other people in the labor market in Japan. So probably we have to look at the other half of the size of Japan, and also the other Japanese companies want to hire someone who have experience in working for a Japanese companies, but the yeah, in this respect, the target or the candidates could be the smaller in numbers in India. And let me then focus on the job hopping or changing their jobs in India. Even in Japan, not a lot of people have changed a job in their 30s, but in India, they have the high aspiration and they want to seek their expertise. So as of 30, they have changed jobs 3 times and 4 times in many cases. So this is the uniqueness of the market at the time, and also this is the salary at the time of changing jobs. So this is drastically different from Japan. And before 2019, I supported the job changing in Japan, but in Japan, the offer salary is the other to keep the present level, or the first year you cannot expect a bonus, so the yearly income could go down in Japan, but in India you can expect the 23% increase of the salary of the annual income after changing job. So not only the increase in the salary, but also there are a lot of the different situations, and also the when renting a house or the room, and every November there is an increase every year. So this could be the other factor to seek the other higher salary when changing the jobs. So this is the situation in India. So it's not easy to find the other good candidates in the Indian labor market, and also they repeat changing jobs. Also, they want to the raise their salaries basically. So in this situation, there are a lot of the challenging Japanese companies would find. And there are three case studies I'd like to share with you today. And this one is the gap of the salary between the reality and the expectation. Every year, 8% increase. This is the yeah, something the other company can the other provide. However, the other employee thinks that the other 10% increase is the average in the market. So this kind of the gap of expectation and the reality happens pretty frequently. So the other employee uh, frequently quit the job suddenly, and this is a case study too. And this is shared by a lot of the other Japanese companies. So the evaluation or the assessment of the employees without any reasons. So you worked very hard, so we'd like to the increase your salary by 10%, but which points were appreciated? This was not qualified, so without any reasons and the clear reasons, 10% the upgrade and increase of the salary, but your employee thinks that I need 15% of the increase in my salary. I should be appreciated more. So there is a big gap between the employer and the employees. So the other employees tend to quit the job. And this is the last case study. As I mentioned before, in India, when hiring people, 23 to 30% increase of the salary is expected when changing the job. This is a standard. So in order to hire capable persons, you needed to the offer 30% the increase higher salaries to that the human resources. As a result, what would happen? So their annual income or the salary would be higher than the existing employees. So there could be the division and the conflict between the new and old employees. And finally, as a conclusion, I'd like to the share some the other important points. And there are 3 points: preparation and hiring and retention. These 3 points are very important. First of all, preparation. You need to understand the Indian market properly. So this is not Japan. So you need to correctly understand the Indian market and what kind of the human resources required, what kind of people you need to hire. You have to define the requirement beforehand. Also, as for the salary, you have to consider the market trend, and you need to decide the salary according to the standard of the market. Secondly, hiring. At the time of interview, not just the selecting the candidates, but in order to reduce the gap after joining the company, what is expected by the employees, you need to identify and what to expect from the candidates or the new employees. You need to clarify that, and also the process is very speedy. If you take the other 1 month or 2 months and for the process, so your candidates also have the other offer from other companies. So you should be very speedy and setting up some good scheduling to provide the offer and provide the follow up in the process. This is very important. And finally, retention. This is also critical. So if you find and also hire the very capable person, if the person quit the job at the early timing, it's a wasteful of time and efforts. So in the present market, the salary rights or rates trend, you need to know it, and also the where is your company's salary is positioned in the market. So you need to do the market investigation or research. At the same time, the fringe benefits important, as well as the other internal events. Not a big event you need to do the every year. In our experience, for the birthday and every month, the two the present the birthday cakes for the employees who have the birthdays on the months. So this is very important. And also you need to develop the hiring plan concerning the attrition of some of the employees. They want to stay in the same company, but concerning their families, they needed to change jobs. A lot of different cases. So you don't have to concentrate a lot of the authorities and responsibilities to one single employee. And as a countermeasures, you need to prepare the second person to take over such responsibilities and authority. So this is very important in India. End of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.